every single Wednesday during the college football season. Kind enough to join us in studio as he's doing right now from Fox Sports and The Athletic. Our friend Bruce Feldman back here in the program. How are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm excited. I go to Dallas tomorrow. We got an interesting game on Fox on Saturday with TCU hosting Deion, your old buddy.
I'm so excited. I really am so excited to see this. What would you say what would be a successful foray for Deion going into this game against TCU?
Into this game, I think if they can keep it competitive, the spread is 20.5. If they can, I don't think he's going to go in and say, guys, let's keep it under 20.
Yes, I know.
But I think that would be, don't get blown out of the building because, TCU's doing a little bit of a rebuild. They lost Max Duggan, who was a runner-up for the Heisman last year, Quentin Johnson, who's first-round pick of the Chargers, lost some other really good players. It's not like they're a preseason pick to win the Big 12, but they're still a really good team. It's not an easy trip to make. They're going to play. It's going to be hot in Fort Worth. But I think if they can be competitive and show that they're a legit Power 5 team and hang with them and where it's competitive in the second half, I know that's not something Deion's going to want to sell, but I think that would be something like, okay, they're not going to get embarrassed this year.
Right. And clearly, I mean, what an offseason, if you will, for Deion to move to Colorado. His physical problems himself, what he was going through with surgeries. He will never talk about that sort of stuff. He looks great. He looks ready to roll. I mean, and his son is a legit player in college football, as well as some other players that he has brought in. Those that were handed their Louis Vuitton luggage, they're out, and those that are now in. So what is your sense of the Colorado season going in?
I think they were horrible last year. Let's get that straight. They were a one-win team last year. They were the worst Power 5 team. They were getting blown out almost in every game. So I think if they can somehow get to 4 wins, I know 4-8 doesn't sound great, but that's a big improvement. And we're looking at their schedule. I think what's going to be challenging for them, if they can somehow get to 2-1, I think because after this game, they have Nebraska comes in there, and then Colorado State, which is probably the most favorable matchup they have all season. If they can at least win 1, if not 2 of those 3 games, then I was like, okay, I think they have a chance to get some momentum going. Because after that, you got Oregon, you got USC. It's not going to be easy. And I think what's going to hurt them is depth-wise, I don't know how deep they are. Like Shedeur Sanders, Deion's son, who's the quarterback, he's definitely got ability, and he's got some really talented receivers. Jimmy Horn came from USF. He's a big-time guy. Travis Hunter was former #1 recruit in the country. He's a two-way player who plays cornerback, will help at receiver. The issue for them is the offensive line, I think, is going to be a big problem because, as you know, that's a position, that's a cohesion position. You need time to gel. Really, none of those guys were there together for spring football. They all are kind of coming together after spring football, so it's going to be a massive work in progress. And I don't know how much talent then they really have in that room. They have a couple of linemen who started in the MAC for Sean Lewis, who was the head coach at Kent State, who's now Deion's offensive coordinator. I think those guys will be the best players up front. I'm very curious. Everybody around college football is really curious to see what they're going to get. I think cautiously optimistic would be about as much as you can hope. But if they can get to 4 wins, I think that's a successful season.
Well, it's obvious that, Deion in Colorado has people's attention. You're going there. Fox big game, big noon game is going there to start the season.
The first 2 weeks we got him. We got him next week in Boulder for Deion's home opener, which is going to be wild when Nebraska comes in.
Yeah, so obviously mission accomplished for Colorado right there, and we'll see what they can do. And also mission accomplished for Colorado. They were the first domino, if I'm not mistaken, of the Pac-12 to be pulled outside of obviously USC and UCLA this year. They were the ones who just bolted. And then the Arizona teams went, and then obviously the Pacific Northwest fell apart, with the exception of Oregon State and Washington State. What is the latest on that going into week 1 of the college football season with the ACC and the 2 teams that are sitting there in the Bay Area? What do you got for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are things that we think, along with SMU, the 2 Bay Area schools, could end up in some version of what is going to be the ACC. I don't know how stable that's all going to feel, right? Because you've had Florida State being extremely vocal about trying to get out and not happy with the deal. I think what we've seen now, or TV deals and the revenue some schools are taking is not what it typically has been, where it's equal shares. So I think that all has been shaken up. I just think there's a wild level of instability for what is left of the Pac-12. I talked to somebody around Washington State recently this past week, and it was like, that is going to be a big game changer if they're relegated to be a Mountain West program. But I don't know what other options, if you're Washington State and Oregon, you have coming up, because it doesn't look like there's any interest from the ACC to go get them. Now, they could go to the AAC, but geographically, that's a nightmare in terms of how do you put schedules together for those other sports. So, I mean, again, I'm glad we have games coming up, because I think this is going to be a really special year in the Pac-12 in the last go-round of it. But everything else is a mess.
Well, I mean, the back-to-back Heisman winner is residing right here in the final season of the Pac-12, and I'm giving it to Caleb Williams already. The way he picked up a football like it had a handle on it against San Jose State. What would even be the competition for Caleb Williams? Give me some names.
For the Heisman?
Yes, sir.
I think there's a bunch of guys who are – this is a good quarterback group. Drake May, the North Carolina quarterback, put up huge numbers last year. I mean, he's got a big game this weekend with South Carolina. I think he's somebody that people are very intrigued by, certainly as an NFL prospect. Different offense. They were in an air raid offense last year with Phil Longo. Now he's up in Wisconsin trying to get the Badgers to be a lot more multidimensional.
Yes.
I think Jaden Daniels, the LSU quarterback, had a really good first season in the SEC. A transfer from ASU. That was a mess at ASU. He got in there, has done well. I think they have a chance to be a playoff team. Everything I've heard out of Baton Rouge is that he has really taken another step forward in terms of how comfortable he is in the offense, in terms of how quickly he's processing what he's seeing. They're really excited about him. You have Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe the most talented player in all of college football, prolific receiver at Ohio State. Now they have a new quarterback. It's going to be Colin McCord. He's got the start for this game at least coming up against Indiana. I think he's a special player. I think he will definitely be in the mix. And you have a bunch of other guys who I think can come up in the like they're wild cards. Joe Milton at Tennessee, huge arm, just the biggest arm in college football. Now he goes into the Tennessee offense where Hendon Hooker lit it up. Maybe Josh Heupel can, I don't want to say have back-to-back explosive offenses that really shock people, but I think he's one that could be a dark horse candidate to keep an eye on.
Bruce Feldman of Fox Sports and The Athletic, beginning his weekly residency here on the Rich Eisen Show here before the wild weekend we expect for Labor Day. You mentioned LSU, Baton Rouge, and Florida State. That is the marquee game of the first college football weekend writ large. Sunday night they play each other. We've got Mike Norvell on first up tomorrow. What's Florida State's future here? Instead of going about this game here, but what moves do they have? You've got them, you've got Miami, you've got some serious power sitting there in the ACC. There's Clemson. What are they thinking as everything is restructuring?
I'm sure they would love to be in the SEC. For a long time, it was like, hey, Florida is not going to want FSU there. I think they want to keep that advantage to themselves, but obviously Texas A&M probably would have had similar feelings about Texas coming into the SEC. Florida State has not been happy about carrying the load for some of these other basketball schools when it comes to football in the ACC. They all agreed to this grant of rights deal that was a massive pact, essentially, with ESPN and the ACC, and it still runs for like more than another dozen years. Can they get out of it? I mean, there's a lot of, depending on which lawyers you talk to, about, will there be some kind of sovereign immunity clause that they can, wiggle its way out of it for Florida State? I don't know the answer to that. I know this. Mike Norvell has done a really terrific job turning around a program that had backslid towards the end of Jimbo Fisher's tenure. They were horrible in the offensive line. I think those guys have really built it up and gradually built it up to the point where this team has a legit chance to make the playoff. You have Jordan Travis is a really good quarterback. They added transfer portal guys. Last year they got Johnny Wilson, who's like a tight end size guy who was playing in the Pac-12, who had a big year last year. They added Keon Coleman from Michigan State. They added a terrific tight end from South Carolina. They've added a bunch of really good players on the defense. This is it's not quite back to what Bobby Bowden had rolling, 20 years ago, but it's way better than it's been in a long time. And he's also done a really good job adding good assistant coaches that a lot of people didn't know who those guys were. Alex Atkins, is the offensive line guy who's the OC. Adam Fuller's the defensive coordinator. I mean, these are, he's from Sacred Heart. As a Northeast guy, you probably heard of that. It's like these are not big school guys who I think have come in and really come together and done a really good job there in Tallahassee.
A few minutes left here with Bruce Feldman from Fox Sports and The Athletic. So, final year of 4 college football playoff teams, right? This is it? Who makes it? What do you got for me?
I think Georgia. I don't think they're going to three-peat, but I do think they're going to make the playoff. I think their schedule is really cushy going in. Ultimately, that could come back to bite them when they get into the playoff. I think USC, I know they were shaky on defense last year. I think obviously they got a lot of stuff to get worked out on the defense side of the ball, but Caleb's phenomenal, as you said. I think LSU will be a playoff team. I think they will come out of the SEC West, and I think they will come out of the SEC ultimately. And your alma mater, this is the year I think that Jim Harbaugh can win a national title, and I think he will. I think J.J. McCarthy takes the next big step forward. They got all those leaders back. I mean, Jim Harbaugh told me when I saw him a couple weeks ago, he said, I think we're going to break Georgia's draft record with the most players drafted. He thinks they're going to have 20. You'll see Chris Jenkins take a huge step forward. I think we're going to, you have Blake Corum healthy. You have an incredibly deep offensive line. Loveland is a difference maker outside. I think that is a dimension that they really haven't had. There's probably 4 guys at Ohio State who could start at Michigan at receiver, but I think now you have some playmakers, and Donovan Edwards is a wild card guy who can obviously be an explosive running back, but I think they can get him the ball in other ways. I just think you're going to see J.J. McCarthy really flourish this year.
So what the hell's going on with the 3 games sit down? Michigan is the one that imposed it, right? Self-imposed
because the NCAA is not happy with Michigan. I think you also have a case, to be quite honest, where Jim Harbaugh has flirted with the NFL, and last year certainly, with the Broncos. I think he wins the national title and rides off into the sunset, and some NFL team grabs him, and then he's just like, see ya, NCAA, I don't care what you do.
Because he just basically flipped them the bird when they asked questions about what happened with hamburgers being bought and a Zoom and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think, and they pushed back. They were like, this isn't about, for the NCAA to actually call out in the middle of a process like they did publicly is very unusual, very rare. I think this is super contentious.
Charlie Baker flexing his muscles?
Well, it's the people under him certainly are. And I think, look, you also have a little bit of friction, or maybe even more than a little, with Jim Harbaugh and Ward Manuel, the AD. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I think you will see, especially as Jim Harbaugh and Michigan keeps winning and keeps ascending this year, I think you will see Jim Harbaugh be very vocal and step on a lot of toes. And it'll be interesting to see how they keep the train on the tracks here.
Him basically saying, let's share money with the collegiate players this past week.
Yeah, he spoke out. No, we've had some coaches. I mean, Chip Kelly's another one who's spoken up about that. And I've had conversations with him talking about revenue sharing. I think you will see that conversation keep getting advanced. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with it. I don't think they like how the economics work out. But that's one of the things that's headed in that direction.
Well, I'll tell you, if Michigan wins it all and the Jets go to the Super Bowl, I'll just stop following sports. I mean, it won't get any better than that. That'll be it, right? What else?
You would take 1 out of 2, would you not? Which would you pick? You would take Michigan over the Jets.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think?
You're longer suffering with the Jets.
Jets.
Michigan has at least had success.
Yeah, Michigan's been successful in your lifetime, and as you say, you've never seen the Jets.
Okay. You would take Jets.
Are you? Is anybody letting you lead the Jets out onto the field?
No, I'm not that.
Oh,
I'm not that. Greeny would, I think, slit my throat first. No
You'd also slit your Achilles if there was one media person going to be let out, leading the Jets out on the field.
Yeah, it would be that. But you'd be wrong.
Michigan?
I need to see this. I got to shut up all these people that are in my ear. No one is in my ear about the Jets. Maybe
there you go. See,
get out of here.
You guys should know him
if I had to choose
me.
One. Seriously.
But you've seen you saw a halftime.
Which one's closer to
we'll get into this conversation.
Michigan is closer than the Jets.
Don't drag this man into a mosh pit.
That's why he's
this man is too classy. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm not that classy.
Thank you again for doing this every Wednesday. It means a lot to me, us, everybody here.
It's good to be here.
And have a great trip. Say hi to Deion. for me.
I will. We're looking forward to seeing him.
I'm so excited to watch this. I'm so excited. And clearly, knowing what happened last time TCU played in against Michigan, and my feelings for Deion. Honestly, I might buy a buffalo and run it around my neighborhood prior to Saturday's game.
I think that would set off some flags.
I'd get arrested.
Yeah.
Thanks for stopping by. Greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.